And we are live. Welcome to the Standout Business Show, where it's all about making a bigger difference by doing business differently. I'm Brad Powell, and today we're talking about how you can make a bigger impact with micro courses. So here's my question on this topic. Have you been planning on creating a signature course or maybe a group coaching program? And is next year, 2024, going to be the year that you will create and host the kind of experiential learning environment that's going to help you scale your business and impact more people? And of course, you could be that the reason you're thinking about this is that you're actually wanting to create long-term sustainable revenue because you believe that this is the best way to create real freedom. Well, if any of that is true for you, to help answer these questions, let me introduce today's guest, who is online educator extraordinaire Matt Biggar, who he suggests that to ensure your program's success, you should build a micro course first. Do this first. So his background has been in corporate training, but now he's guiding business leaders in harnessing their passions and strengths and turning those passions into gamified and engaging micro course experiences. So stay tuned, because we're about to take a deep dive into how you can create your own micro course as a journey of discovery designed to ignite creativity and passion in your audience. And with that, let's start the show. All right, Matt, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, I'm happy to have you on today because I'm absolutely intrigued by this whole concept of micro courses. And, you know, when you look at the online education space, there's actually a lot of problem. I mean, there was this big promise that, oh my gosh, we can put education online. A lot of things that were unattainable and inaccessible for people are now like readily available. But the opposite side of that coin has been that most people, and I'm going to include myself in this, who buy an online course, we put it on the shelf, the digital shelf, and it just sits there. Like we never, like I have probably half a dozen programs that I've purchased that I've never even touched. Like I never even went into the first lesson and took a look at them. So the completion and the finish rate and the real impact that online education has promised has really been, it seems like, more or less a failure, or has been failing in a lot of ways. And so there's a lot of, interest in how do we solve this problem? Like, how do we make the promise and delivery of education over the internet actually work for people? And I think that you may be onto something. So as we're starting this conversation, talk about your view of the landscape and how you have approached, a cure for what's going on with online entrepreneurs who are wanting to reach a larger number of people and actually have them get the result that they're hoping for.
Yeah, that's a great question. I love it. My journey unfolded in a very similar way, where I started acquiring courses, and I noticed eventually that I just wasn't really completing any of them. And so I wondered, what's really happening in the industry? Is this a common challenge for people? And after doing not very much digging, it was very apparent that it was a relatable challenge, that a lot of people are buying course products and not completing them. So there's a couple of things that I have some ideas around what we can do about that, both as course creators and also people who consume courses. So I like to kind of share insights from that perspective. So the first thing I would say is we need to be a little bit more strategic and intentional with our purchases as potential buyers of courses, right? So because, marketing can sometimes be manipulative. I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that, right? There's all kinds of scarcity tactics and things that are, they add pressure onto people to buy a course when they may not necessarily need it. And so by first thinking about how can you make decisions based on what's congruent with the future of what you're trying to build for yourself, and making and filtering decisions through that first, it can save you some time, effort, and energy on buying the wrong kinds of course products, right? We just passed through, we had Black Friday, there's always tons of promotions online and in retail, obviously. And I think a lot of people end up spending a lot of money on stuff in those times when there's a scarcity element to buying that course. So that's from a consumer standpoint, bringing an additional element of intention to your purchase before you go ahead and buy it. Do you really need to buy a course on podcasting or how to start a YouTube channel? Is that the thing that you want to build right now, right? Because we have this tendency to sort of hoard resources. and what can happen is we might think, oh, we've solved our problem. This actually can happen subconsciously, where we buy the course and then we feel like we've solved the problem. But then what happens is we have this skill gap, right? So you get inside the course product, and if it's not like engineered for creating momentum for people, then it's very easy to get overwhelmed because it's new information. You're outside of your comfort zone. You don't have a lot of context for some of the stuff. And so the way that we present information and deliver that information is essential. And that's one of the reasons why I love a micro course as a product, because we can design an experience that is made for getting people quick wins, making the content more consumable, more actionable, and getting to something more specific as an outcome for that course. So that's the balance.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, I think there's a real tendency in the general public, however you want to refer to sort of the average person, which is people are looking for a silver bullet. They're like,
yeah,
I have pain of one kind or another. There's something really bothering me, or there's some, the worst case scenarios. I'm not making enough money with my business. And so when you're in that state of going, where's the next business coming from for me? How do I, do better with my marketing or do better with my messaging or whatever that is? And along comes a day like Black Friday or something, and all these emails are getting in your inbox, and they're going, here, we're going to promise you, you can make $1 million in 20 days, with hardly any effort.
Yeah.
Just come right over here and buy it. And for today only, it's only $9.95 or whatever the discount price is.
Mm-hmm.
People do get an impulse buy because they're just feeling like, if this could be the one thing, this could be the one answer for me that will get me all the way down the road. And I really think, when you're talking about that, the choice of, well, what do I really need, or what am I willing to do to get there? I think really people need to start from their planning point of view of, like, if they're looking at 2024, like right now, because we're, talking in December of 2023. And so you're looking at next year, as well as all the other things that you're doing for your planning, you can build into your calendar, I am going to learn this skill.
Yeah.
Or I am going to, in this case, produce a podcast, or I am going to, develop a new marketing method. And these are the action items, including taking this particular course, that is going to help me get to that goal. And just like anything else you might do, literally put it in the calendar.
Yeah.
Like that. All right. So let's just imagine that somebody is going, okay, fine. I'm thinking about enabling my people to get further along the goal. And the other thing that I see that most people are thinking when they do that, like I've seen course creators jump into, I have all this information I have just a ton of stuff. And when I teach my course on this, I need to like give it all away. Like I need to put everything into this program. It's going to be the best ever. And what they do is they run off into the woodshed and they spend months
Yes.
building the program. And then they come out of the woodshed and go, here it is. And of course, crickets, like no one's listening or paying attention or nothing, or maybe they don't even want what you created. Mm-hmm. So talk about, like, this is where I think the micro course idea can offer a huge solution to that particular problem, which I think people have done like a lot.
Yeah.
So talk about that, like how a micro course fits in with the creation side of what are the topics that you want to teach and how to avoid the fire hose effect.
Yeah, I love it. So the first thing that we look at when we're planning a course, we're co-creating something together. That's how I guide people when I'm working with them. And the first step is, what is the thing that you actually need for your business that's going to be the most impactful? Are we creating an onboarding experience for clients who have already enrolled in your services? Or are we creating a micro course that's going to warm people up to your brand that you either sell at a really low ticket or even give it away for free? It's to get people like creating momentum, overcoming obstacles and moving towards becoming ready to work with you. And the fun part is we could actually make both. You could make an onboarding experience and also warm people up with the same product. You just take some small tweaks to customize the experience for people. So that's the first thing, is what is the strategy for your micro course? How does it fit into your business ecosystem? How can we make it congruent so that it's creating the type of momentum that you're actually looking for? So that's a big part.
Let me just interject there. Like I love this idea because especially for service providers or maybe an agency, and their ideal client is a pretty, high ticket B2B type of client who will come in and ideally not just engage in a, months long or a year long kind of engagement, but will actually stick with you for the long term. That there are all kinds of things that you could service them with in an ongoing way. And landing a client of that kind takes actually quite a lot of education in your marketing, in the way that you relate to them. So the idea of creating an experiential learning, process where, yes, for the ones who you're onboarding, now they're feeling really well cared for when they come in the door. But also as a public facing thing for people who are thinking about the solution that you offer and thinking about the problem that you solve, and you are educating them around, little things like their objections and their pain points and then quick, easy steps that they can take literally to get them ready for saying yes and coming in and say, okay, now we're going to do the whole thing. This just sounds like a terrific engagement strategy.
Yeah, there's a gap that happens for a lot of business owners, especially if they have services, one-to-one services, or even one-to-many. There's a gap between, people coming into their, say, an enrollment conversation, and they're not necessarily always ready to work with you. And so we create this take it or leave it situation when we don't have an onboarding experience like what we're talking about. It's like, sorry, you're not ready for my one-to-one. It's too expensive. Well, we can't work together. And this solves for that. You give something to people that they can actually start working on and creating momentum with.
Yeah, I really like that. I mean, I remember, this is the whole previous life, but I used to be the program director for an Outward Bound course in the Pacific Northwest, which was a sailing program. And there was a certain skill set that people had to have in order to become an instructor. And there was also get along with everybody skill set that people had to have. And there were people, like, we would do a training at the beginning of the season for all these people who were applying for the position. And that was a real assessment time. The training was an education experience, very experiential, but it was also an assessment. Are these individuals who are on this training ready to actually join the staff. And in many cases, there were people who just weren't ready, either because they didn't have the skill set or because they didn't have the social set of, like, actually, because it's an intense thing. Like, you absolutely have to coexist with your staff when you're out there leading a bunch of teenagers in really challenging environments. You can't have inner staff conflict. That just doesn't work. So anyway, I would, at that moment of saying to someone, no, we're not going to hire you, I would open the door for other ways that they could do things that would make them ready for the next time around.
Yeah.
And I just think that that's it's a great thing to be able to, offer. And I don't even want to term it as a downsell. It's more of, here's the on ramp.
Yes.
Like, if you don't feel for whatever reason that this isn't a fit at today in this moment in time, here's a great easy on ramp. Like, here's a great thing for you to do. You're going to get some of the result you're looking for. I'm actually still going to hear helping you and serving you, and we'll bring you closer.
Yeah, definitely.
So let's talk about the form and structure of a micro course, and especially, like, I'm very intrigued by the whole gamification aspect. Like, I'm really big on experiential learning and more experiential programming, which I think is so different than what most people are doing, which is that they do a form of PowerPoint teaching,
Yep.
which is it's that death by PowerPoint thing. And it's kind of lame and boring and overdone and not all that effective. So talk about some of the methods that you help people include in their micro courses making.
Yeah. So for framework on course planning, I share the 5x5x5 framework, which is essentially before you bump up against the parameters of making a larger course product. I really feel like the ceiling is this framework where you've got no more than 5 modules. And that's kind of on the heavy end, honestly, for a micro course.
Yeah.
And you have no more than 5 videos per module. And then you stick as best you can to delivering your insights in 5-minute videos inside of that product. And that can keep you on track. So it kind of gives you a framework so that you can stay, within the confines of, like, not overpacking and overwhelming the product itself. In terms of gamification, some of the simpler things that we can do, first of all, is, like, any game has a challenge to an extent. And so we want to be real about that. If you have something inside of your course product that's going to be a little bit harder or more challenging for people who have never gone through it before, you can actually just let them know, like, this is coming. Like, this, give them the heads up that part of this experience can be a little frustrating. Because if you don't address that stuff, then that's where people will usually drop off in the course product and never complete it. So we want to be realistic about that stuff. It's okay to have more difficult challenges, but you want to strategically introduce concepts in a way where people are getting the micro wins before you start presenting, like, a heavier concept that's harder. For gamification, we can also do rewards, right? We all know that, like, you look at any, basically all social media and video games have a dopamine reward system.
Right.
And basically, have a quiz at the end of your first module so that it shows them, like, where they're at. They have to answer some multiple choice questions, and that actually reinforces the learning. And once they pass the quiz, you can literally just give them a certificate or a badge or something, points. There's lots of different ways to execute on that. But like, if you think of, like, an onboarding experience as a brand new client to a brand, and you're able to achieve something because you've gone through the onboarding experience and learned the lessons, like, that just reinforces everything. Now it introduces this element of fun because you've accomplished something. And I think that people, when they're designing their course products with the PowerPoint presentation slides, completely overlook what that experience is going to feel like for a recipient of learning. And that's probably one of the best things I could share with you in terms of gamification. It doesn't have to be complicated. And it does really depend on what kind of software as a service that you're using to deliver your course product, because they're all different and they all have different features, especially when it comes to gamification. But this is one of the things we can do: badges, achievements, certificates, quizzes. Those are simple ways.
Yeah. Do you have one platform that is like the leader of gamified features? Because there's a lot of choice out there in terms of where you could put a course.
Yeah. Yeah. So I like to try my best to stay platform agnostic. I will
Okay.
admit that I am very biased towards Kajabi because of its all-in-one business tool. I
Yeah.
host coaching programs, community products, email marketing, everything inside of Kajabi. And so for me, it's a place to go and focus and work on my business. And I used to use WordPress. For me, it wasn't the best solution. I didn't want to learn how to code, and I kept bumping up against the parameters of, I ended up wanting to build stuff into my website that I had to hire a developer for. There are lots of great solutions. So the first one that comes to mind is Experiential, that starts with the letter X. So you can check that one out. A friend of mine on LinkedIn has Access Ally, which is a WordPress plugin that has gamification built in. So if you're on that platform, that's a really good solution. So those are definitely a couple that I would recommend checking out for sure. There's lots more, and I'm still digging in. There's an overwhelming amount of options, but I'm happy to get into the weeds of that and like really dig into it. And so I'm in this exploration phase right now of testing and trying out different tools.
Okay. Yeah. Great. Well, those are a couple of good suggestions. And I'm wondering about when you're talking about the 5x5x5 framework, people making 5-minute videos. Now, I know that within that, like that's the ceiling, the 5 modules, and then no more than 5 videos in each module, and no more for 5 minutes. Cool. What's the other end of the spectrum that you've seen that people have done? Like in my world, I'm one of the things that I'm helping clients do right now as part of their marketing is what I'm referring to as the short form sales letter. So instead of the 5 to 8 to 10 minute or longer sales video that is basically a mini webinar, teaching you about something and then pitching you on something, I am coaching them on creating a set, and I mean a small set of 4 or 5 1-minute videos that each one has a different goal and outcome, and they work as a bingeable series, so that the video 1 leads to video number 2, and there's a bit of a cliffhanger between each one. And to me, this is something that intrigues me. It's like, well, how micro can you make your content and still have it be impactful? Mm-hmm. So what are you experimenting with, or what are you seeing with your clients in terms of really going on the micro end of things with their work?
Yeah, it's kind of fun because Elena is a recent example, and she basically ended up putting so much of her heart and energy into her microcourse product that she decided that she wanted to own it and keep building it out and turn it into a larger product. So there's no hard rules here. On the shorter side, I bought course products. I think this really depends on subject matter too. I just want to give that caveat. So I don't know if anyone's familiar with Rich Litvin. He talks about client creation, and I bought his course. There was 6 videos in there, and the 7th video was a 30-minute recording of him doing group coaching. So that's a pretty small product, and he was charging a couple $100 for it. And I think he actually scaled up the pricing based on sales. So that's the other thing. I think if as long as we have the promise of what I'm calling the podium finish moment, and you can realistically make that promise, like if you go through this course material, you will accomplish this thing. This is what success will look like for you once you're done. And having clarity on that first, then you can figure out, reverse engineer it, what materials need to go into the product. But there's no like hard and fast rule about this. I think if as a consumer of course products, if I had bought a course product from, let's say on the bottom end, $47, and we're talking about micro courses specifically, $47 on the lower, like cheaper side, and then up to somewhere around $200 on the higher end. And then I got in there and, I'm going through the materials, and it's not really it's not fulfilling on the promise. That's the biggest point of your people are going to stop learning, or they're going to ask for refunds. So we want to make sure that whatever the podium finish moment is, it's realistic and you can promise it, and people will actually get those results. So there's a lot of testing that goes into this, and making sure the materials are transferring the knowledge in the way you need them to. So again, no hard and fast rule, but if we go too small and too lightweight, like say you bought a $47 course, there was only 3 videos in there. Could that realistically deliver on the promise? Maybe. I'm not sure, but I would also be, I'd be kind of annoyed if I spent $50 to $200 and there was only 3 videos inside of a course product that were 5 minutes long. I just bought 15 minutes of content, like, right? So what we want to do is, how do we pack in more value than what was perceived or sold into the course product? You can give them bonus videos. You don't have to overwhelm them with information. It's all about brevity and being concise with what you deliver, but you can actually add in some extras on the front end of the experience. Here's something that you didn't expect that I want to say thank you so much for buying this course. Check out this bonus training. So that it's automatically this experience of I'm getting more than what I paid for. And that's ultimately what we want to create, is an experience where people feel like they got more value than what they paid for.
Yeah. I think that's a very healthy approach for sure. And there's certainly so many examples of the opposite. People buying things and going, what? This is not what I wanted, or it's not what was promised. And so let's talk a little bit about that from the point of view of pricing. So you've created a product, it has high perceived value, and you as the creator believe that it actually is going to deliver on that value. And yet, talk about the pros and cons of, I could offer this for free as a way to engage a core group of the people who are paying the closest attention to me, as a way of continuing to nurture them and bring them into my fold, and or I can charge them a relatively small amount, like you say, $47 to $199 or something in that range. And at the same time, that level, like I'm selling a $50 course, I'm going to have to sell a lot of courses to make much of a difference in my annual revenue.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily going to be a revenue stream that will be significant to the bottom line of my business. So how do you think about the pricing of a micro course?
Yeah. So I'll start with parameters. So I would never recommend anything under $47. There's a psychological thing that happens with that price point, somewhere around $50. Anything cheaper than that, people won't value it. The completion rates will probably suffer, returns, etc. That's not the type, for most business owners, is not the type of pricing model you want to go with under $47. And I just like 7, so bear with me. Okay, it could be $50, it could be $49. So on the low end, and then on the higher end, a couple of $100. I think you're still within that parameter, depending on your subject matter. The way you can turn this into a larger amount of revenue, if you're having trouble with seeing like the bigger picture of, I'm going to make a $47 product, that's not really going to do much for my business. You can basically plan, this is specifically for coaches and consultants. I'm not sure exactly how this plays out for service-based businesses, but plan a group cohort off the back end of the course and create a connected learning experience where people get in there and they're learning together. And then you have scheduled group coaching calls with them to help them through to the finish line of the course product. That type of approach, from what I've been researching online, is taking completion rates from like between 6 to 8% to over 80%. So it's a huge jump. And if you're getting people results, ultimately what we're doing, if we're talking about sustainable revenue, is we're creating a flywheel of recommendations. You want this recommendation engine operating inside of your business so that people come into your ecosystem with this on-ramp we've been discussing. They can get to that win, that podium finish moment, and then either, provide testimonials, or if they love the experience, tell their friends or colleagues about the experience too. So that's how you turn it into bigger wins. If it's just a micro course at $47, you can include it with a group coaching cohort. That'd be a great way to improve completion rates and build this onboarding system that we've been talking about.
Yeah, I like that. I'm a huge believer in cohort-based learning. I've experienced it myself, and in the group programs that I've been doing, it works really well for video learning. Nothing like a group of people making videos and then sharing them with one another and giving each other feedback. It works terrifically, and it also creates a safe environment so that
Yes.
First-time video maker can post in the group. The only other people are going to see it are the group members. It's not public yet, so it's much safer, and people can be giving much more positive reinforcement and encouragement, which is what a lot of people who are getting in front of the camera for the first time really need.
For sure.
So we're getting to the end of our time together. It goes by super fast, but we barely scratched the surface on micro course creation. If there is one more thing that you would like to share about this strategy, what would that be?
Co-creation, for sure. So try not to build your course products alone, in the shed or in the lab or in the dungeon or in your office, all by yourself. This is how most people build their first course. It's lonely. It sucks. It's not fun. You're making assumptions. You're second guessing everything, every single step of the way. And that's where we start to overpack stuff because we're not confident in the value of what we're delivering. So a better approach is to find ways to co-create your experiences together. Host live workshops to test your ideas and connect with people, build out your network, build relationships with potential collaborators, joint venture partners, people who can help you promote the course, who have a similar audience and maybe complementary services. But find ways to co-create in everything you're doing instead of doing it all solo.
Yeah, love that. Hear, hear. Collaboration is the key to success in a lot of ways. All right. Well, if someone is listening to this and they're thinking, well, Matt, I'd like to collaborate with you to get your help on my next course that I'm going to create, what's the best way for them to reach out to you?
Yeah, I definitely love connecting with people on LinkedIn. Happy to accept invitations on the platform. You can check out my website, matthewbiggar.com, and there's some resources on there. I'm building my own micro courses, leading by example. I'm going to be hosting some live workshops coming up here before Christmas. So I'd love to connect with you on LinkedIn.
Cool. Awesome. Well, I'll make sure that all the stuff, like your links to your LinkedIn page, are in the show notes. And Matt, thanks so much for coming on today. This was a really cool conversation.
Thank you, Brad.
And for those of you listening at the end, I just want to remind you that if you want to go and binge on the entire archive of the Standout Business Show, go to standoutbusiness.show, and it's all there. All the video, all the audio, all the extra resources. You can binge to your heart's content. We go live every Tuesday and Thursday, Eastern Time, 11 a.m. And until the next time, so long.